Hey, welcome to Your Successful Retirement. You know, it's getting to be that time of year. I don't know why it's that time of year, but people start thinking about, layoffs and different sort of retirement offers. If you work for Verizon or AT&T, it tends to be that time of year that people start thinking about it. On top of that, there's been some interesting data coming out, in the as we're in the fall of 2025, that the last 18 months maybe of jobs data is ugly. It's bad. Is we may be near the top of an economic cycle for hiring. Is everybody that has a job pretty much has a job, and now things can get ugly and turn negative, and people start getting laid off. So that's what I want to talk about today. Is kind of whether it's planned or unplanned. If you work for, say, Verizon, it might be kind of planned. It might be a little planned. It might not be planned much at all, depending on what's going on. I know, like here in the Northeast, the IBEW and CWA have their contract coming up. I think next year it's up next August of 26 is when the next contract is. There tends to be an offer right before, just to kind of reduce the roles and reduce the union's power to the company. It's one of those. I don't know if it does, but the company kind of thinks so. So there might be something coming there. Both companies, both Verizon, AT&T, and a lot of other big corporations are still really focused on cutting back on the number of employees. Is they know that the technology is doing more of the work. They need less people, and they're trying to figure out ways to get rid of it. So I want to talk about, what do you kind of do when you get that offer, whether it's planned, whether you're looking for it, or whether it just kind of comes as a surprise. And we might be coming into a season of that. And it's not ugly. I've been doing this for it's not pretty, rather. I've been doing this for 34 years. The panic you feel is beyond what you can imagine. Is this gigantic safety net you have from your job is just gone. And there's nothing going on. Now, whether you're 25 and you may have been working at this job for 2 or 3 years, or you're 60 and you were looking at retiring in a year or two anyways, it doesn't mitigate that panic. That panic is just there. The more prepared you can be, the better off you are. I will say that. It doesn't reduce the panic much, but it makes it easier. I will say this. We all have that time when we had to make a panicked decision, whether it's trying to decide which off ramp to take at the airport when you're driving. Do you ever notice that no matter where you go, maybe Kansas City is one of the exceptions. I've always found Kansas City to be easy, but my gosh, there are these giant confusing loops, and you're constantly going from the left lane to the right lane, and there's traffic all around you, and it's a very panicky situation, and you're trying to make a good decision. And that's, regardless of if it was that or something else. And you make that decision, and about 7 seconds after you do, you realize, oh, that was the wrong choice. Panic time is not a good time to make these choices. Making these choices, or at least being prepared for them when your stress level is low, is going to lead to much better outcomes. It's going to allow you to have that sense of perspective, that panic kind of shrinks down. If you think about, again, the driving thing, there's the joke of, why do we turn down the radio to see better when we're driving? Because it's a sensory input. As I recall years ago, watching a program talking about aerial dogfights and aerial dogfighting. And this, I think it was a Vietnam War pilot was talking about his F-4 Phantom. And he said, you get up there and you're going to be in a dogfight, and you just start shutting off all of your warning systems. He says, I can't listen to it. He said, the SAM warning system is the first thing I shut off. I cannot stop a SAM from hitting me. I can't. So having it warn me beforehand is not doing me any good. And I shut it off. I shut off all of this extra sensory input and get rid of it. Because when we're in that stress situation, our focus narrows. We get that tunnel vision. We want to stay out of that. Is if we can make as many good decisions beforehand, it allows that tunnel vision. The automatics are going to happen. Oh, I already know what to do in this situation or that situation. That's what I want to talk about today. And I've got Six different things, some for younger people, some for older people, some for everybody, just so you get a sense of kind of the things you should be thinking about, whether you plan on getting laid off or hope you get laid off from whatever job you have right now, or you're not, and it comes in as a complete surprise. So first one I want to talk about is your severance. In most jobs, you will get a severance, and it will be taxed. Go figure. But it's important to know beforehand what that's going to look like. Severance income is part of your W-2 income, and that comes with a bunch of caveats or a bunch of things you should be aware of. It's W-2 income. It is considered, if it's paid in a lump sum, it's considered lump sum bonus. Now, bonus, if you've ever had a bonus, whether you get a team award through work or a commission bonus or something like that, you'll know that, boy, they take out a lot more taxes on the bonus than they do my regular pay, because the government says that an employer is required to withhold a bonus as if it was taxed at your highest estimated marginal bracket. They'll estimate your marginal bracket based on the total gross income. And so they may take 24% for federal taxes. They may take another 5 to 7, depending on what state you live in, for state taxes. They will take 7.62% up to a certain amount of total income for FICA and Medicare. You could end up getting 55 cents on the dollar before you even get it. You need to be aware of that. Is a $20,000 severance check may only wind up being $11,000. If they do 401k contribution towards it as well, it might only be $9,000 or $8,000. Be aware of that the number you're going to get, you don't have any control over that. Is the corporation that you work for is going to be functioning based on what the federal laws are. In addition, you want to be aware of timing. So typically, Verizon, AT&T to some extent will give you a choice on your severance, regardless of what they call it. They call it an IP, an ISP, a RIF, a MOOF, a BLOF, whatever they call it, these acronyms they have. They'll say typically, at least in the last 15, 20 years, you can get all of it over a 4-year period, or you can get half up front and half over a 4-year period. All things being equal, money today is worth more than money tomorrow, right? So half now and half over 4 years is more lucrative than everything over 4 years because you get a bigger lump sum. But that could cause you tax problems. So you need to know what your tax bracket is. You need to know where the next tax bracket is. It's vitally important you know that, is to know where you're going to bump into next. Are you close? Because that may affect how you choose. Because, yeah, I'd like the dollars today versus the dollars in the future. But if it's going to push me into a higher tax bracket, and that tax bracket's significant, I want to be careful. The flip side is that if you get this large lump sum severance number late in the year, so you've received most of your pay for that year, and then you're going to get this lump sum on top of that, you might bump into what's considered the FICA max. There's a maximum amount that the government will tax you for your FICA tax on your income. It works out to about $176,000. So if all of that's added together, greater than 176, you're actually going to save money on FICA tax. FICA tax is 6.2%. Might be worth it to take the lump sum then. It might be more advantageous, even though you're possibly in a higher tax bracket, depending on how your tax brackets run. These are complicated transactions. I will tell you for a fact, it's not easy to do. Every time, say, Verizon comes out, and we do a lot more with Verizon than AT&T just because of geography of where we are. Every time it comes out and we have a few new clients come on, or existing clients that are getting offers, whether voluntary or not, we've got to run through these calculations, and the client has no idea. And it might mean $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 extra in your pocket that you wouldn't know otherwise. So it's important to know these. If you don't know how to do this, you need to get a professional that does know how to do this. That's vitally important. So that's taxation. Let's talk about health insurance. This is, again, something everybody's going to deal with. The pat answer is, oh, you can just go on COBRA. Please don't go on COBRA, or please don't blindly go on COBRA. COBRA, and it's a long acronym. It's Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, is the OBRA part of it. I forget what the C is. Maybe it's consolidated. You'd go, what does that have to do with health insurance? It was part of this gigantic bill back in the 80s, and that's how it got there. And what it says is you can continue for a certain number of months, depending on your situation, your employer health insurance at full cost. You go, that's great. Okay, I'll just keep paying what I'm paying. No. At full cost. Oh, I wonder what my full cost is. You can find out. You actually know this number, or at least you can get a good estimate of it, because this year is this year and last year is last year. What I want you to do is go pull out last year's tax return. So for us today in 2025, pull out your 2024 tax return. Grab your W-2 from your employer. You're going to look in box 12. Box 12 is this little code box. There's a whole bunch of box 12 codes that tell you things like your 401k contribution and match, things of that nature. Well, there's going to be one code DD. DD is what your employer pays for your health insurance. Be sure to be sitting down when you find out this number. It would not be unheard of if you add in what your employer pays plus what you pay to be $35,000, $40,000 a year. That number would not surprise me. I will tell you personally, I have okay health insurance. I don't have the absolute minimum, but I'm pretty close. And for me, for a family plan, I know it's over $2,000 a month just for that. I get mediocre prescription coverage. I pay a good amount for copays. I think my copay is like $50, which I think is outrageous. But I remember when I was 6 years back in the 80s. Oh, it was $6. And the deductible is pretty high for regular stuff. It's high enough that I never bump into it, that we're always paying cash for everything. And it's $2,000 a month. Yours could be $3,000 or $4,000 per month for COBRA. You need to know that now. Don't walk into that and be surprised. You need to know what that number is. You want to also take a look at what your other options are. And that will depend on if you're going to another job. So you may take COBRA if you know you're going to be over at this new job very quickly, within a month or two. Within weeks, you may want to just kind of continue the COBRA just to have continuity of coverage. Continuity of coverage is so important today. In the post-Obamacare era, continuity of coverage is everything. So make sure you have that. But you can go on most states. I'm going to say all states. I don't know that for a fact. I'm going to say most states, and it probably is true that it's all states, but we don't know. I haven't checked all 50 states. Will have their own website. As I know, Massachusetts, again, Massachusetts was the blueprint for Obamacare. We had Romney Care before Obamacare existed, and a lot of what's involved in Obamacare that's been around for 16 years now, 15 years, something like that, we've been dealing with for that long. And there's good and there's bad. There's a lot of things I don't like about Obamacare, and I didn't like about Romney Care. I got forced into it many years prior. But here's one that's really helpful, is the state has a website. And in Massachusetts, it's Mass Health Connector or something like that. You can go online. You don't need an agent. You can go online and you can start looking at different plans at different companies and lay them out and figure out what the cost is, because your cost might be less because you might have different needs than what your base policy is at your employer. And you can change that. It might save you money. It might not. It might cost a fortune and you stick with the COBRA, but you want to know what that number is. It is vitally important, because keep in mind that if you're not 65, it's going to cost something for health insurance, and it's going to be a decent number. You need to be prepared for that number. It's so different than it was. In my head, I'm 56. In my head, I think it's reasonable to spend $10,000 a year for health insurance. I don't live in reality on that. I understand that. $24,000 that's just the cost of doing business these days. I don't think it should be. I'm trying to figure it out. We had a podcast just recently of why is this stuff so expensive? We're not going to solve the problem, but it's crazy expensive to me. And when you look at these severance offers of maybe it's a $50,000 severance, remember we're only getting 55% of it. So you're getting $26,000. And you know in the next 12 months, you're going to spend all of that on your health insurance. That's a big deal. That's a big, big deal. You need to be prepared for that. Timing, I will tell you also, is critical. You do not want to miss coverage. Be very careful. You may pick up COBRA for a month or two, possibly, just to carry you over. But if not, if you're planning on not keeping COBRA because you're not going back into a job that's going to provide health insurance or whatever, you want to make sure you move quickly on that health insurance. You don't want to break in coverage because losing your job because of a severance or just retiring is what's called a lifestyle change. It allows you to make changes. So if you pick up your spouse's coverage, it allows you mid-year to pick that up or buy something outside or whatever. But once you get far enough away from that decision, it's no longer a lifestyle change and you may not be able to change at all. You may be stuck with what you have or not having any insurance at all and have to start from scratch, which can be even worse. So be very careful. Know your numbers with your health insurance. Third, this is more for the older folks. Social Security. You need to know what you should do with Social Security. I'm going to throw a lot of opinion out there. I can back it up with fact, but it's one of those things where it's how you look at it. And I look at it through the eyes of reality. I'll give you, for instance, my son-in-law, Justin, who works with us, is going through his CFPs, just finishing up his CFPs designation. He's got this big final test coming up in a little bit. And he's dealing with these questions that they're hypotheticals because it's a test and they've got to limit things. And he's struggling with what the reality is of how we do business here and what the theoreticals are of this is how it should be. Well, nobody lives in that world. And you've got to kind of balance those out. And he's got to make sure that he sets aside the real world to get through this testing, and then he can go back to the real world. And even his instructors, his online instructors, talk about set that aside. You know that's not reality, but we're not going to deal with that. So I'll give you, for instance, with Social Security. And here's my blanket opinion. Every person is different. Every situation is different. But if you want a blanket rule to start from, just to start from, if you're not working and you're Social Security eligible, start collecting, period. And it could be at 62. It could be at 64. It could be at 67, which is full retirement age these days. It could be at 70 when they force you to start taking it. And I think that's a riot. That will definitely change in the next 5 to 8 years, is they will not force you to take Social Security at age 70. They're just going to not increase it anymore. Right now, the max Social Security benefit you can get is based on age 70. So at age 70, they start sending it to you. I think the government should say, look, if you don't want it, we're just not going to increase your benefits anymore. We're not going to give you more benefits for collecting at an older age. So somebody at 67 will collect 100% of what they're entitled to. Somebody at 62 collects about 70%. And somebody at 70 collects 100 and something percent. So there's all of these calculations. There used to be years ago when Money Magazine and Smart Money and things of that nature were on the newsstands. There would always be articles about the calculation and you should wait. And I don't think that's true. And I'm going to tell you why. There's a bunch of different ways to run that calculation. And the first way is the most simplest, it's just a simple break even. Okay, I start at 62 and I start collecting $1,000 a month. And I keep collecting that until whenever. Or I wait till 67 and I collect about $1,400 a month. And I collect that. When does the cumulative amount of money from the 1,000 and the cumulative money from the 1,400 equal? And it's somewhere mid 70s. And a lot of these magazines, a lot of these online articles that I've read over the years have said, well, the odds of you living past your mid 70s is pretty high, so you should wait until 67. Maybe. But let's take another step further. Remember, we talked about the severance. We talked about dollars today are worth more than dollars tomorrow. Oh, we've got to factor in a time value of money type of thing. So I've got to value today's money as like 100%, and money like 10 years from now isn't worth as much. It's worth something, but not as much as the dollars I get today. And for somebody that's going to collect at 62, they're going to get 60 payments today before the person collecting at 67 even gets a nickel. When you run those calculations, it's the early 80s. Oh, well, it's kind of a break even, depending on your situation and the quirks of what exact age you're taking it versus when you could and things like that. It's somewhere around the early to mid 80s, let's say early 80s. It's right around life expectancy. I'm running a 50-50 split. Maybe life expectancy will increase over the next 25 years. Maybe I should I should wait. I'm going to tell you that's not reality. People don't live in that bubble. Here's the bubble they live in. If I'm not taking money from Social Security and I'm not working, where am I getting that money from? Where are you getting it from? You're not working. Right. You're not collecting Social Security. Right. Where does the money come from? Now, some people may be lucky to get a pension and they're living on the pension, and that may work out to their benefit and they can live happily on their pension. The rest of us, the vast majority of us, we're going to be spending our investments. Oh, wait a second. I didn't think about that. Most people don't. You don't think about, I'm going to be dipping into my investments earlier than I wanted to and spending that money down. When I run that calculation, for the vast majority of people, there are exceptions out there, but for the vast majority of people I have done this for, 90 something is the break even at that point. That's when break even happens, is because I'm depleting my assets early. The choice isn't how much money did I get in Social Security. It becomes what my total net worth is. When does the break even of total net worth click in? And it's somewhere in the early 90s. That's a big deal. You need to be aware of that, of thinking about, when am I going to collect? My standard answer, without any other view of your situation, is earlier is better, provided you're not working. If you are working, you just can't collect. It's just not worth it. You can start collecting at 67, no matter what. Maybe. Not a lot of people I see working at age 67. Most people that are working at age 67 work for themselves, is the reality of it. And they're not worried about all of this. This doesn't become an issue. So yeah, they're not getting a severance for that matter. If you work for yourself, you're not going to get laid off. So there's that. So that's my Social Security spiel. Earlier is better. And that kind of helps you kind of plan those things of the cash flow. Another one for the older people is, what do I do with my 401k? What about my 401k? What about if I have a lump sum pension buyout? Because I've been at Verizon or AT&T long enough to get that lump sum pension buyout. There's a bunch of different rules you have to be aware of, because you may look and say, oh, there's money I can tap into. Maybe, hopefully not, but maybe. What you want to be aware of is the first magic rule is 59 and a half. And it is an exact age magic rule. You cannot withdraw money the year you turn 59 and a half early in the year and expect to avoid the 10% penalty tax. And that's what we're worried about, is retirement account withdrawals before age 59 and a half come with a 10% penalty, because the government doesn't want you spending that money early. They want you to use that money for your retirement. There are some exceptions, as there always is with tax code. The first exception, and this is something people start, the wheels start spinning of, oh, I'll do this, and you want to be very careful, is there's a rule of 55 that it says if you separate after you reach the age of 55, so your 55th birthday, not when I touch it, when I separate. So that's the first key. You may withdraw retirement plans at your current employer, not other employers, not your IRA. You may withdraw that money penalty free. There's a whole lot of caveats to that, aren't there? You got to make sure I retired at the right time. If you retired at 54, this doesn't apply to you. Retired at 54 and 359 days doesn't apply to you at all. And if I take my 401k and I roll it over, which a lot of times is a good idea, to an IRA or to a new employer plan, you just forfeited that ability. Be very, 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 very careful. Again, this is one of those areas, a professional. It's important to have somebody that knows what they're doing, that has the experience looking this over for you. So I will leave it there. There is another option that I haven't done in years because it's an awful option called substantially equal periodic payments, or something. Some people call it 72T, which is the short version of the tax code. It's ugly. Don't do it. I will tell you, the rules are horrific. They are you will bristle under them. Not now, but 4 or 5 years from now, you will bristle under them. And I've had too many clients that did it early on, 15, 20, 25 years ago. And invariably, every single one of them 3 years later said, I want to change this. And it's like, you can't. You cannot change the rules of this. We agreed to this when we set this up, and there's nothing we can do about it. And they didn't like that. So I would say avoid 72T/substantial equal periodic payment. The last one is if you have substantial amounts of Roth contributions to your 401k, you can always withdraw the contributions tax-free. So it might be an advantage to you. I will say this. If you're under 59.5 and you don't have substantial assets, and by substantial, I mean at least 5, preferably 10 times your income saved, please, please, please do not think about, I'll just take that money from my 401k. I'll just do that. It will bankrupt your future, or it has a good chance of bankrupting your future. And you want to be very careful of that. It is amazing how fast that money goes when you take it early. My earliest retiree from Verizon, it may have been 9X at the time, was age 49. Way too young. Way too young. He was part of a department that was basically getting decimated by a retirement offer. He didn't want to be the last guy there. Everybody else was 4 or 5, 6 years older than him, and he left. And it has been a tough struggle for him because of that. And we did tap into his 401k early. We using that 72T calculation, and he bristled under that, and it was very difficult, and it was no fun. And we struggle every year to make sure he's going to be okay. Is make sure you have sufficient assets and retire at a later age. What do you do with the 401k afterwards? I'm going to combine the last two kind of here together. 401ks are awesome. I love them. I contribute to mine heavily, max it out every year. Very happy. There are things that a 401k does that are very advantageous for us while we're working there, and they work against us when we're not working there. So when we're working, we're putting a fixed amount as a percentage of our pay every single pay period, whether it's biweekly, weekly, monthly, whatever it is, and it goes in and it goes into those investments. So when the investments are doing really well, when they're up, we're not buying a lot of shares, are we? But when they're losing money, and this is something I want you to think about when we hit the next recession or next economic downturn or next financial downturn within the stock market, is when the market goes down, we're buying more shares at a lower price. So when the market recovers, assuming the market recovers, we have more shares at that then now higher rate. It's if you understand dollar cost averaging, this is exactly what it is we're buying low and we're selling high. We're not buying as much high. We're buying a lot more low. It's buy low, sell high. While you're working, there are limitations to your 401k. There's limited investment options. There's limited ability to move money, whether it's in between funds or out of the account. It's very limited. But that dollar cost averaging, that ability to put money in and to constantly be always buying more of our buying less of our winners and buying more of our losers within our allocation is superior to anything else you can do. It defies. It's one of those, the monkeys throwing darts at the dartboard versus the professional investment advisor. This is the exactly type thing that happens. But then you stop working at that company, whether you retire or you move to another company. All of a sudden, all those things that we kind of ignore, limited investment options, limited changes in those investment options, limited money availability of sending you money, they become kind of a drag on that plan. And the difficulty is somebody that has multiple employers. And this is a modern thing. Is my wife was on the cusp of that 30 something years ago. Is she wound up having, I think, 6 jobs in 6 years, which freaked me out. We're talking 1991 through 1997. She had 6 jobs in a row in 6 years. And that freaked me out a lot. Now, she moved up every single time. She wasn't moving sideways. She was moving up. Every single time she got a new job, it was something better. But I was freaking out of, man, you don't have any tenure. They didn't care. They cared about her skill level, which is how people look at jobs today. So there's a lot of people that have multiple jobs. I see people with 3, 4, 5, 6 old 401ks and ask how they're doing. I haven't looked. That scares the pants off of me. If you have multiple 401ks out there, you need to consolidate them. Whether you consolidate them at your current employer, which isn't the worst thing in the world, or you consolidate it into a single IRA, you need to consolidate. It's vitally important. You're ignoring those investments. They may be doing something that you thought about 8 years ago, and that's wrong for your situation now. Is you need to make sure that those accounts are being watched, because it is, I cannot explain how important it is that if you're not contributing, how it's important it is to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I see that so often. I will also say the last thing, kind of wrap through the last issue, is if you're dealing with multiple employers, you're going to have a harder time retiring. And you need to know that. You need to know that early. Is if you've had 3 jobs in the last 9 years, you're going to have a harder time retiring. And that's going to mean being more serious about your retirement planning. And what I mean by that is you need to make sure that you're saving money outside of your existing plans now. Think about this. You start a job and you start on January 1st, but it isn't until March 1st, sometimes even June 1st or July 1st, that they're going to let you into the 401k. Are you saving money in that time? Are you really? Or are you just putting it away and then you kind of use it on a boat or a vacation or down payment on a car? It was kind of saved, but then you kind of spent it. But it was important to spend it on that thing. You didn't save that money. And let's say every 2.5 years of a 40-year career, you're missing a half year's worth of contributions. That is going to seriously impact your ability to retire successfully versus somebody who has 30 years at the same company and just keeps dumping 10% a month every single month into their 401k. If you have had multiple employers over your career so far, you really need to sit down and run the calculations to see how far, if you're on track or not. I talked with a woman recently that is in this exact position. She's had multiple positions over the last 25, 30 years. She's in her early 50s. And I haven't sat down and looked at all her data yet, but based on what she makes and based on how much she has saved, she's really short, like a lot short. And she thought she was doing okay. I think I'm doing okay. And I pointed out, just kind of the balance there and what she thought she'd get for a return on those investments and how much money she has now. And it was a real eye-opener for her. So you need to be aware of that multiple employers means you have to take a lot more of this responsibility on yourself. So that's what I have for today. Those were the 6 things I wanted to go over. Spend 15, 20 minutes online thinking about these things, running some quick calculations. Or here's a thought, go hire a professional. I'm sorry. It's somewhat self-serving. This is what I do. Is we do this a couple of times a year for clients and new clients, just running through all of these calculations and doing the best job possible to thread that needle to put as much money in that client's pocket as possible. It's important and it's hard stuff. It's stuff I do every day. It's stuff you don't do. Somebody was explaining online in this discussion group, making a USB-C out of a little SSD. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's like the turbo encabulator videos. If you don't know what that is, Go on to YouTube, just type in turbo encabulator, get the original. It's hysterical. This old guy talking about the turbo encabulator. It's complete nonsense. I'll give you the hint. The first time I watched it, I was trying to understand it. And I got to like the 8th sentence before I realized this is utter complete nonsense. So what I talk about when I talk about the details is going to be utter complete nonsense to you. Hiring somebody like us is important because it's important to get the best answers possible. And I'd prefer, for your sake, whether it's me or anybody else, you might want to do it before you get that severance offer. Because again, remember that tunnel vision. That's the biggest thing, is that tunnel vision is going to shrink down. The odds of you making bad decisions is so much higher at that point. So that's what I have. If you have questions, jump down in the show notes. You can reach out through LinkedIn or other social media or our website. You can also email me directly at dennis@successfulmoney.com. And I'll try to answer any questions I can. With that, stay safe out there.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Remember, the views expressed are not necessarily those of Successful Money Strategies. All content is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as an endorsement of any third party or their views, or as a solicitation or offer to sell securities or provide investment, tax, legal, or consulting services. We believe the information presented to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed for accuracy or completeness. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Hypothetical returns do not reflect actual trading and may not be indicative of the performance of any specific investment. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Additional information, including management fees and expenses, is provided on our Form ADV Part 2, available upon request, or at the SEC's Investment Advisor Public Disclosure website, https://advisorinfo.sec.gov.